Hey guys, thought I would share some of my views and experiences regarding vaccines, my thoughts on mandatory vax, Bill Gates, the whole satanic narrative going around, etc. about this. But I also want to impart something as well which I've witnessed in my life, and I'm going to use this at the beginning as a disclosure now. As you're listening to people talk about topics, if you become emotional about it and you respond straight away, then you are in a position where you're controlled. Now, at the very start of literature and theology, great persons try to communicate this to you. Perhaps the most famous book in the world is the Holy Bible, and in there's a mystic code I've spoken about before, and in that level of mysticism, red is the emotion, Egypt is the lower self, a pharaoh is your ego, and Moses is you, the seer, the seeker, the wayfinder. Now, what does Moses have to do? He has to flee Egypt, his lower mind, and the Pharaoh is hunting him down. And when he gets to the Red Sea, what does he have to do? He must cross the Red Sea. He must cross the emotions to be free of the ensnarement of the lower nature and the ego dragging him back into there. Now, when you respond with things emotionally, that's all you're doing. You're going back to Egypt, and it's not where anybody wants to be. And I see people coming into this ego trap. When you're like that, if you want to hunt an animal, you've got to be able to predict them. When a person's in the lower nature, you can predict their actions. That's why fear is the currency of control. That's why I keep saying anything that scares people is not useful at this time. What's useful is focusing energy on building the new. It always will be, it always has been. It doesn't mean that you put your fingers in your ears and close your eyes to the events around you. It just means that you adapt to your environment. Do you think that people were protesting winter before we had civilization? When the winter months come, do you think they were out protesting it? Do you think they were out getting irate about it? Or do you think they were sitting around working out how to find a solution to get through the winter that they are in? And that is the situation we find at the moment. We have, through our ancestry, surrendered ourselves to a system which has taken over nature, and we didn't build or control or unroll that system. So whatever happens in that system, we have to adapt to the environment that we are in at present, whether it's just or not. That's what you have to do. That is how humans get by. And I've spoken about this before, that certain religious parties on the planet had a belief that they, in the system they had given, had taken a position of God. They had built the Tower of Babylon finally. Babylon that we all dwell within and rely upon. But in doing that, they also saw a need to ensure that there were predatory forces. Now, out in nature, it's not just lions, etc. It's famine, it's drought, it's flooding, it's all of these problems that you face, sickness, so on and so forth. These are predatory forces against the expression and the betterment of humans out in nature. Inside the system you live in, which is your natural world at present, unfortunately, however you deem it to be, this technologically world we live in, that is your environment. And inside there are indeed predatory forces, such as endless free pornography, endless TV series that never have an end to them, media marketing, which makes you go and work in a job you don't want to make someone you don't know wealthy so as you can buy their stuff and carry on working for them. These are all predatory forces, and this is based upon the idea within the building of their systems that they had to do that. And the Freemasons have known about this for millennia. That's why their religions state the very earliest of the Freemasons, their ancestry, are the ones who built walls. And in building walls, they separated from the natural laws of the planet, and they created their own inner development, and thus had innovation, invention, planning ahead of those who hadn't yet built the walls. A competition of evolution, if you will. That is the belief system that they face. And in exploring the self within there, they started to explore the spiritual side of things and the biomechanics of things and the psychology of things. And here we are today on this planet where psychology and propaganda is the greatest, the abuse of which are the greatest tools to control the greatest resource on the planet, which is the way human beings behave and think and act. The greatest resource is how a human being thinks at this present time. If you don't value oil, it's got no value. Thus, It comes as no shock to me that these things are happening, and it should not you. And you should not let it drag you into your lower nature. You should not do that. So what about mandatory vax? Well, I'm totally opposed to mandatory vaccine. It's not about getting poisoned. I couldn't care less what they inject into my body. I can detox it out. You know, it's as simple as that. If you're worried about what someone can inject into your body, you can detox it out. You can detox it out. You just need to stop eating food and let your body push it out of your skin, out of your... that's what happens when you water fast. You cleanse yourself of all this crap. Now, mandatory vax is not about that. It's not about poisoning you. That's not what it's about. You might love your body and not want to put something in it, and that's very acceptable. But what it's about, it's a stepping stone for too many control mechanisms, and it's about body sovereignty. Who owns my body if I'm born into a system that says I have to inject this into it? This is not right. Now, we barely have any sovereignty left as it is. Most people don't understand the way the world is set up. You have Rome. It's the religious centre of the world we all grew up in. You have the Crown of London, which is the centre of London. It's not part of the UK. That's the financial centre of the world we grew up in. That's why the pound has remained the strongest currency throughout, no matter what has happened. The Vatican, of course, is not part of Italy. It stands sovereign on its own. The Crown stands sovereign aside from the UK, has its own police force, and people swear allegiance to it and they don't even know. Washington DC is not part of the United States of America, but nobody knows about it. That's the war centre. This is the world you grew up in, despite what borders you think you've been party to and what leadership you've been a party to. This is the system that we were born into. And inside that system, when you're born, just as you're birthed into you birth a ship in a dock, your birth certificate is your name birthing into that system. You are being birthed into the system. Now that means that your name, the concept of what you are, which is a little deep for some people, but there's a concept of what you are. Your name is just a concept, it's not what you are. The planet, as Alan Watts said, has peopled, just as an apple tree apples. And the planet has peopled a person that is you. Now, inside the personages that have peopled, there is a brain. And inside that brain is a game of imagination and illusion that we agree to create a reality. For instance, we agree that pieces of paper have value. We agree that this leadership has power. We agree that the police force have an ability to look after laws that are beneficial most of the time. These are all concepts inside the human mind. They're not concepts of the natural reality around you. And thus your name is owned by that conceptual reality that benefits us all greatly, this new environment that we are born into with the birth certificate. Thus, if you want to get something in the conceptual reality to do anything, your name, you can only get a driving license, open a bank, etc. But you can't get your name to do something with your body. Your body moves independently of that separate, internalized, yet externalized reality that we've all played a party to. We've all agreed to it. Because it helps us. It brings about some level of comfort. And that's why we've all agreed to it, because humans are inherently lazy and we prefer it that way. So, when you take a mandatory vax, who then owns the body? It's not the name anymore, it's no longer the mind, it's the body. They're saying they own the flesh as well, and that's a problem. The other problem is the stepping stone to control. The stepping stones to control are that they're saying they want to have a chip in you, they want to have vaccine passes, so on and so forth. Now we can be outraged by that again, but I can remember before the war on terror, we'd have never accepted to have this many CCTV cameras and security checks, and now it's become the normality. Whether you like it or not, nobody's protesting it. Everyone's accepted it. So this will come, and we will end up accepting it again. This is what is happening. We can keep commentating on what's being done to us, but we're not going to change anything by simply commentating on it. We're only going to change it by deciding on our own story and what we're going to build with inside our ability to adapt to the environment that we live in. But what's the stepping stone of control? Already in Africa, you can't move some country to some country without vaccine passports. You've got to have a pass to say you're vaccinated in this way or that way. If they start wanting to chip people and monitor where you're going, that's the end of freedom and liberty, and there's too much control over whoever controls those systems, which will be technocrats. And that is an issue. And that is a massive, massive abolition of liberties and freedoms. Give me death or give me liberty. It's never been more true than as it is now. Now, many of the promotions of this are that it's under the guise of protection of humanity. But unfortunately, many people can see that there is a problem with this. We are seeing clearly. There was a report the other day that in America, the news actually got doctors and nurses to queue up as if they were testing for coronavirus to make it look busy. That's one example of the mentality of these gargoyles who are pumping the news into your home. Breaking news, fear this, fear this, fear this. If I took over the news, the first thing I'd do is stop reporting on it all. I'd report on things to keep people safe, but I'd start saying, times have changed. Humanity has accepted finally a loving nature. We are all serving each other. It's a global phenomenon. Everyone's going out and looking after one another. Everybody's frowning upon the idea of having mass material wealth. It would create an economic crash. That is the problem. People would freak out from it. But if I did that, it would create it, because people would stop buying into the type of person that we have been told we are, a consumer. That's what the problem is at present. We are consumers driven by the media's narrative. And the consumerism is genuinely, it tends to be soulless. It's about material objects for your flesh, or stimulus for your flesh, or entertainment for your flesh. It's never about going into the depths of yourself and finding your soul and conquering your flesh. It's always the opposition of that. And thus you end up being in the god of the flesh, which is deemed as Satan.
Now, I think that this is something of very great importance to the Western world today, because we have developed an immensely powerful technology. We have stronger means of changing the physical universe than has ever existed before. How are we going to use it? There is a Chinese proverb that if the wrong man uses the right means work in the wrong way.